Culture exercises power. I repeat the keywords: gender, race, class, colonialism. I told you the first point is culture studies is interdisciplinary. Second point, culture study uh, embraces many disciplines. Culture studies examines the relations of culture and power. And I also told power is exercised in four important components: race, culture, class, and colonialism. Okay. So now you may ask me who was the founder of these culture studies. So I told you Birmingham was one of the important centers in 1963-64, where Professor Richard Hogarth started this department called Birmingham Center for Contemporary Cultural Studies. It is otherwise called Triple CS, CCCS. Okay. So Richard Hogarth. After Richard Hogarth, we had a very important person. All of you know very well, Stuart Hall. So Richard Hogarth, he got some other post and he had to decline. Please wait, David. I'll let you know and then you can. Yeah. Thank you. Stuart Hall was the second person to head the department in the Birmingham Center for Cultural Studies. And after Stuart Hall, one more fellow, Richard Johnson came. So these three faculty members are considered to be founders of cultural studies in the world. But who contributed a lot for the development of cultural studies is Raymond Williams. I think many of you might have heard his name also. Raymond Williams, who was known for his book For Culture. Okay, so that person was also very responsible. I told you culture studies is interdisciplinary in nature. Culture studies examines the relationship between society and culture and power, and again power is exemplified. Culture studies examines how power is exemplified in gender, race, class, and colonialism. These four words are keywords to understand culture studies. I also would like to highlight culture studies influenced literature a lot. The reason is literature has become a cluster of cultures now. Literature has become cluster of cultures now. Number two, literature has become a cultural study material. It has become a cultural study material. The reason is what is after all, we have to remember the seven important points related to, seven traits of culture. So all of us, discuss and every day have used the word culture. But what are the seven traits of culture that have an association with literature is this. Number one, human beings create culture. So all of us create culture. And second point, culture consists of ways of doing things. Third point, culture is public, it is open for all. Culture arises from tradition. Fourth point. The fifth one is culture is made up of governed rules governed actions. Sixth point, culture becomes established institutions. And the last point, culture gives us our identity. Okay, so I use so many words like identity, institutions, rule-governed actions, tradition, ways of doing things, and we create culture. So if we create culture naturally, we also create uh, literature also. So I would like to take you to M.H. Abrams, his book written in 1953, The Mirror and the Lamp. The Mirror and the Lamp. So all of us are familiar that literature mirrors society, correct? So literature mirrors society. Literature is nothing but mimetic. Okay, so that is one thing. M.H. Abrams pointed out in his book, 1953 book, The Mirror and the Lamp. Look at the word lamp. Literature mirrors society, but M.H. Abrams says it was until the Romantics literature was mirroring society. But after the Romantics, starting from the Romantics, literature became a lamp because it illuminates society, it illuminates culture. That was one of the reasons for the Harvard University professor M.H. Abrams naming his book Mirror and the Lamp. So after 10 years only we got the center in Birmingham, Center for Culture Studies. Before that, this book, in my opinion, was considered to be one of the 100 books in the 20th century, a kind of influential books according to the British Library ranking. Okay, so in that way we have to remember two words: mirror and the lamp. Once it was literature was a mirror. If it becomes culture studies, literature has become a kind of the soul, the inner souls of all human beings in this world. So literature, once it was monolithic, has become polylithic now. In the words of culture studies, literature has become democratic forms of writings. So in that way, I would like to set my background, and then I wish to take you to my PPT. David, I can go to the next slide, please. Okay, literary and cultural studies provide access to historical and emergent traditions of literature, culture, and thought. So I can summarize, all my discussions so far in these two sentences. Though through critical interpretation and dialogue, we can see how language, mediated through text, arranges and allows different ways of knowing and living. So literature has become culture study material now. So we can travel now by using words like gender. So we have gender studies now. So it opens up a lot of ethnic literatures also. It opens up avenues for a lot of indigenous writings in this world. It also includes areas such as media studies, film studies, anthropological, discourses, historical discourses. So all our literary theories are nothing but interdisciplinary knowledge have been used as tools or base for all our gender theories, all our literary theories in this world. Next one, please, David. David, yeah. So cultural studies, we can say, it is a field of theoretically, politically, empirically engaged cultural analysis that concentrates upon the political dynamics of contemporary culture, its historical foundations, defining traits, conflicts, and contingencies. So that is how we can define cultural studies now. So, in other words, cultural studies opens up lot of opportunities for literature to study culture, to study race, to study gender, to study colonial practices, to discuss translations in this world, to discuss adaptations of literary text into movies. Like that, we can go on and on listing lot of disciplines came in to empower, to debate literature in a multiple perspective, in a multidisciplinary perspective. Next one, please, David. Okay, so all of us, I just randomly, picked up these titles like gender roles. Okay, so literature has to have a gender perspective. Look at the characters acted as um, females in the Shakespearean stage. So we have to discuss, and we have to discuss now how this gender role became very, very important for all of us. So, and then gender studies as part of culture studies discusses women studies, men studies, and then in LGBTQIA studies. Like that, we can go on and on now to discuss gender perspective in literature. And there is also another perspective. Literature in general is patriarchal in nature. I can tell one example. Literary genres, the next one, tragedy was considered to be very, very superior genre, and tragedy was considered to be masculine, whereas comedy was considered to be a kind of feminine because it was full of humor. So, like that, the gender perspective came in after the advent of culture studies to look at literature, to look at the genres in such a way, to take Shakespeare as you like it. The prose used by the low class, the so-called low class characters, was considered to be a kind of prosaic in nature, but whereas the prose used by the upper class characters were considered to be poetic prose. So there was a kind of a class approach to understand a Shakespearean text, a gender approach to understand Shakespearean text. And also history is very, very important. And history must be horizontal in Foucault's point of view. It is not vertical now. It is not vertical. Vertical history has no democratic ideas. And then politics came in literature, and religious discourses came. Hagiography, is one of the important fields in literature, and comparative literature came, comparing characters, comparing not only characters, comparing novels, genres, and then allusions. Greek mythology came. Mythology came into literature to understand the corpus of many approaches, and also folk tales came. So symbolism, critical theories, a lot of things came to unpack the meanings in literature. Next one, David. So these two books, are very, very important. Research in Literature and Language, Philosophy, Areas and Methodology by Deshpande is an Indian book. So the other book edited by John Woodmark, Language, Literature and Meaning, Volume 2, Current Trends in Literary Research, is also another book in this, the theme of the webinar is going on, spinning around these two books. These books are very, very important to understand more about what I have, shared with you so far. Next slide, please. Okay, now I am going to introduce three important books related to research, which are my own area of interest. So this book, look at the title, Research as Resistance. So all of us are familiar with the title Resistance Literature, written by Barbara Harlow. Look at this book. Research as resistance. How can you resist using research as a tool? So this book is a telling example, edited by Susan Striga and Leslie Brown, talks about three important research framework. Number one, indigenous research. Number two, critical research. Number three, anti-oppressive research. So what do you mean by all these things? So don't think in the all high-sounding words is nothing bad. I can put it like this. Research is patriarchal in nature. Research is Western in nature. So there is a necessity for us, all of us, to use the same tool, research, as a tool of liberation. Who are doing like this? I can tell two examples in my next two slides. Okay. So, or in other words, the researcher is a Westerner, is a colonizer in the indigenous perspective. I repeat, researcher was a Westerner, so he was a colonizer. Number two, the object of research was considered to be the colonized, like Caliban. Okay, he was a colonized in the perspective of the indigenous scholars. Okay, two examples I can give. Next slide, please. Okay, research undertaken in many countries across the globe. I can take one example from Maori writer Linda Tuhiwai Smith in New Zealand, or I can take one more example from University of Botswana faculty in African continent, Bagel Chiliza, one from the south and one from the north. You can see a lot of writings in Native American studies, or writings in Australian First Nations, or writings in Canadian First Nations. In all these areas, you can see researchers were once travelers. They also came to India. So researchers in this world were the pioneers in colonizing the countries in the name of surveys. A Surveyor General in Calcutta and Chennai in India housed a lot of manuscripts related to research undertaken in India. So Calcutta Surveyor General and Madras Surveyor Generals appointed by the British government in India were considered to be the earliest researchers of India. Next slide. Okay, so they have a framework. So epistemology is the study of knowledge. Research is nothing but research also is nothing but it is a discussion about knowledge. The research always contributes to the world of knowledge. So the indigenous scholars in this world, they look at their epistemology like this. Where is their epistemology? It is there in culture. It is there in their collective memory. It is there in their lived life, everyday life. Okay. But what is Western knowledge? Western epistemology is like this: objective, linear, and therefore hierarchical in nature. So we have scientific tools, we have mythic tools to understand the Western epistemology. So it is the hierarchical in nature, it's linear in nature. I repeat, the Western epistemology is objective, it is linear, it is hierarchical, it is scientific, it is mythic. Okay, the right side. What about the indigenous or the epistemology of the native inhabitants in the world? They say everything in the cosmos is intimately interrelated and represented as cyclic. Or indigenous epistemology is circular in nature. It is not linear. You can say the Western epistemology is literature. The indigenous epistemology is culture studies. So that is how we can understand. Okay, it means what? The indigenous epistemology in this world, starting from man, spirit, land, animals, and rituals. So all the cosmic, components are interrelated. So indigenous epistemology is subjective. It is circular. It is non-hierarchical in nature. Okay, so this is the it is like telling Yamach Abram, I quoted right. Yamach Abrams in his book Mirror and the Lamb, I told you he spoke about uh, four important theories objective theories, pragmatic theories, correct? Mimetic theories. So, M.H. Abrams, in his famous book Mirror and the Lamb, he brought out how theories can be divided into four groups. What are they? Mimetic, pragmatic, expressive, and objective. Okay. Mimetic means what? Mimetics means nothing but the text and the universe, the relationship. Pragmatic means what? The work and the audience. That was pragmatic. Expressive means what? The relationship between the work and the artist, the author. The last one. Objective means what? Close reading of the work. Close reading of the work. So that is how M.H. Abrams grouped theories into four. But the indigenous epistemological perspective is everything in this world is interrelated. Everything in this world is circular. So it is very, very difficult to bring hierarchy in literature or hierarchy in culture or hierarchy in history. So culture studies is also like that. It breaks barriers in history. It breaks barriers in hierarchies. It breaks barriers in literary boundaries. Okay, so it bulldozes all the barriers. Culture studies bulldozes all the barriers in literature. Next one, David. Okay, so it means indigenous scholars, they say there is a systematic fragmentation in this world. Or Mary Battisti, look at the first bullet point. The indigenous stories are silenced as they are made to endure other atrocities. What do you mean by other atrocities? I like to quote one word: epistemic violence. So there are stories in this world. You have a story, I have a story, my ancestors had story, your ancestors have stories, but there is no space for all of us in the written world. So Mary Battisti says, we have stories in this world, but we read only some stories. What are they? Because some stories are silenced. Some stories are made to endure other atrocities. So there is a violence. So that violence is called epistemic violence, or violence on the cognitive side of the people in this world. So this is called systematic fragmentation. Fragmented stories. Only some stories are popular, not all stories. And Lunda T.Y. Smith, a Maori scholar from New Zealand, who wrote Decolonizing Research. I am going to introduce that book also. She said there is a cognitive imperialism in this world. What do you mean by cognitive imperialism? Cognitive means what? Mind. Imperialism means what? The idea of the idea exercised by the powerful nations in this world. So we all suffer from cognitive imperialism. Your mind was colonized. Our mind is colonized now. So the knowledge produced by the West, the so-called Western research in this world continues to oppress people, exclude people, undermine people, dispossess people, displace the indigenous peoples from their own memory and identity. We have Mehta Patkar, Ganesh Devi, and others, activists in India who talk about the rights of the people. They need human rights. They want justice for all. Okay. So culture studies will not oppress. Culture studies will not exclude. Culture studies will not undermine. Culture studies will not dispossess. Culture studies will not displace any people in this world, because for us, memories are very important, identities are very, very important. Only culture studies can promote memory, can keep memories alive, can give identity for the people of all walks of life in this world. Next one slide. Next slide, David. So this book I would like to introduce. This is by Linda T.Y. Smith, a Maori scholar who wrote this book, Decolonizing Methodologies. This book you have to read because this book talks about research through imperial eyes, how research was considered to be a kind of tool for oppressing people in this world. Linda also rejects the term post-colonialism because post-colonialism will not help us to understand the stories before the arrival of the Europeans in this world. Next important scholar who questions post-colonial theories, post-colonial research is Thomas King, a towering writer, native writer from Canadian First Nations. His name is Thomas King. He wrote an essay, it's a very beautiful essay available online. The title of the essay is Godzilla versus Postcolonial. He says, post-colonial theory is nothing but it is an imaginary object or imaginary animal like Godzilla. Next slide, please, David. Okay, Linda T.Y. Smith, very important point. The third bullet I would like to quote. Smith critiques dominant Western discourses of knowledge, objectivity, by demonstrating how Western stories and regimes of truth are situated within a particular cultural social system that needs to be decolonized. That is the key sentence in this book. Next slide, David. David, next. Yeah. Okay. I have introduced Mary Bettisti and then Linda T.Y. Smith, Thomas King. Now, the fourth person is from the University of Botswana. Her name is Bagel Chilisa. Her book is titled Indigenous Research Methodologies. Okay, what do you mean by this indigenous research methodology? She says, there must be a decolonization is very, very important for understanding, unpacking research. Why? Decolonization is a process of centering the concerns and worldviews of the colonized other. Colonizer has got self, but the colonized has other. So the other's perspective is very, very important. Okay, so she's giving lot of ideas. In this book, you can go on and on. Next one, next slide, David. Okay, and then indigenous theories and post-colonial literary theories will not go together. So post-colonial theories must be questioned by all of us. The reason is the post-colonial is the theories of the first world. So we have to understand the third world countries. We have to understand the indigenous people who are called fourth world, so that all the Western theories will not help us to understand the research and also the writings and also the critical perspectives of the non-Western literatures available in this world. So there is a necessity for culture studies to democratize everything. Next. So we have other scholar like Weisner from Native America, who talks about the concept of survivance in post-colonial theory. Other scholar Eve Tuck, the third bullet. So she's also known for how promoting the research related to the indigenous population. So like that, we have lot of characteristics of indigenous knowledge, which is nothing but part of cultural studies in this world, where the Western knowledge must be debated, must be questioned. Next one. So the role of indigenous knowledge in creating epistemology is very, very important. One example I would like to quote, look at the bullet number 4, Maori culture. Okay. In Maori culture, there is an alternative research method is promoted by Linda is Kaupapa Maori research. What do you mean by Kaupapa Maori research? It is nothing but the researcher must be from inside. Suppose if you want to do some research about Maharashtra, only the people from Maharashtra must do research about Maharashtra. If non-Maharashtrians come, they may not understand Maharashtra in a better way. So that is the argument. Okay. Next one. Yeah. Okay, now it is not only, I told you, gender perspective is very, very important in culture studies, correct? So gender is very, very important to not only to understand literature and also the text of popular writers like Shakespeare. Research also must have feminist perspective. So all of us are familiar with there are many forms of feminism. The most popular forms are American feminism and French feminism and continental feminism. So now we have nearly 18 schools. Each will have 6 or 7 schools. But what about feminist research theory? In research theory also must have feminist perspective. Why? Because women in non-Western societies have been marginalized and their voices are distorted by Western patriarchies, third world patriarchies, and then colonial practices, and also imperial ideas, and also globalization, and also by the Western feminist theory and research. Even Western feminism will not understand third world feminism. How many layers of oppressions are here? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 times. Indian indigenous or African indigenous women have 6 layers of oppression by Western patriarchy, by third world patriarchy, Colonial patriarchy, imperial ideas promoted by patriarchal structure, globalization promoted by patriarchal structure, and also women suppressing women. Western feminist theory and research will not understand the African women's problem. Okay, next one. So there is a necessity for indigenous feminist research practice. So this is the one of the recent trends happening all over the world. Even in India, also starting from Chipko movement and then other, protest movements, many social movements, social protest movements in Kerala and Tamil Nadu. All these indigenous movements, they need a kind of tool through indigenous feminist research practice. Next one, David. Next. Okay, so I'm going to give you the list of related fields of culture studies. So gender studies has come recently. It is an interdisciplinary academic field devoted to analyzing gender identity and gendered representation. And when you read the book by Judith Butler, who wrote Gender Trouble, she says gender is performed. Gender is performed. It is not only constructed in society, gender is performed according to Judith Butler. Yet gender studies also includes women's studies concerning women, feminism, gender, and politics. Gender studies also includes men's studies. Gender studies also includes LGBTQIA. So one of the earliest book, commenting on the question of women and sex is The Second Sex by Simone de Beauvoir. Next. So all of you must be familiar with these books. So LGBTQIA. So the Department of English University of Madras houses a book titled LGBTQ Reader. So we have this book in the department where many scholars of LGBTQIA origin, they wrote critical essays about LGBT issues in that reader. But these books are for you to just check it. Next. I think women studies and men studies and LGBTQs form one area that is called gender studies. Okay, next. This field is one of the recent trends that you must be familiar with. This is called post-genderism. This is not like post-colonialism or post-modernism. This is post-genderism. What do you mean by this? So, see, we have intervention technology, assisted technology in the reproduction in this world. So many scholars of gender studies, they say, what is the necessity for women studies and men studies? Because there are no barriers now. We have to demolish, bulldoze all the barriers. Okay, so there is a necessity for post-genderism. It is a social, political, cultural movement arose from the eroding of the cultural, psychological, and social role of genders, and an argument for why the erosion of binary gender will be liberatory. So, like that, it is very radical in nature, but this is the one of the recent trends I wanted to let you know. Next. Okay, next, contesting post-colonial studies. So, post-colonial studies will no longer help us to understand the histories, the micro histories that are available in the post-colonial countries like India and other countries, Africa. Okay, so in the words of Stephen Slemon, the attributes of post-colonialism have become so widely contested in contemporary usage. its strategies and sites so structurally dispersed. Okay, so there is a necessity for social constituency and political commitment. Next one, David. Next important field that this is coming up now, many of you might have heard of this, is Migration and Diaspora Studies, MDS. Again, it is a part of cultural studies. It is an interdisciplinary program. When you go to Carleton University in Canada, Carleton, Carleton University has a separate department called Migration and Diaspora Studies. Okay, so this area is one of the contemporary areas that we have to be familiar with. We have to do research also. Next word is testimonios. Testimonial is a Spanish term. It means witness narratives. Okay, when you go to Latin American writings, which is considered to be the offshoot of cultural studies, Latina writings and Latino means feminism. Latino means men studies. Okay, so Latino feminist testimonials. Do you have time, Badhu? Badhu?
Yes, sir.
May take 10 minutes?
Sure, sir. Sure, sir. No problem, sir.
Okay. Thank you. So this book is one of the powerful books edited by Ines Hernandez Avila. This book records the testimonials of nearly 56 writers in the Latina feminist group. So this book is considered to be one of the powerful books in this century because this book talks about the testimonials or witness narratives of Latina feminists. Okay, and testimonials have got three types. Number one, individual testimonials, collective testimonials, and then digital testimonials. This is a separate field of research for all of us to do more on these testimonials. So before that, we have to read this book. So I have this book. If anyone knows, I'll be happy to share. Next area that we have to be familiar is digital humanities. So this is the reader, Siemens and Susan edited this, a companion to digital literary studies. So what does this field do? You take Macbeth by William Shakespeare. So how many times the word blood is used? Or how many times the word cloth is used? Correct. So we have word count for everything now in this e-book technology. So digital humanities is very much interested in highlighting resources or vocabulary, gender or anything, culture, everything we can discuss using the digital literary tools. Next. Yeah, in indigenous studies, we have all these areas. Yeah, I think I have already discussed. Next slide, go next. Yeah, next important area that we can do research is Asian Dalit writings. Starting from this book is one of the earliest books in India, but we have a lot of books now published in Pakistan, Sri Lanka, and also other countries. So next. The African American studies is another area we have to focus. Next one. The disability studies is another area. You have this book, The Disability Studies Reader by Leonard J. Davis. Okay, this book will give you the voices of our own friends who are differently abled, the people who lost their vision, and the kind of experience. Those experiences also are very, very important. So disability study is very, very important because we have to listen to them, we have to understand the pain of our own friends who are differently abled. So this book will be an eye opener for all of us to understand the corpus of our own differently abled friends in this world. Next. Other areas for contemporary research is post-truth and post-humanism. Okay, so these two areas are very, very important to understand the kind of meanings and circumstances that are shaping our own opinion, our own personal, emotion. These things are very, very important. And post-humanism marks a very, very careful rethinking of dominant humanist or anthropocentric account of who we are as human beings in this world of machines. Next. So again, theories have become interdisciplinary. So theories are not properly researched. So we have gender theory, we have cultural studies theories, diaspora theories, critical theories, translation theories, and then border theories. So border theories are very, very important. So there's a separate field called border theory studies. Next. Yeah, this area, I think our faculty or students can take up research, cli-fi fiction, okay? Climate fictions is one of the contemporary areas where we have nearly 15 to 16 books related to climate fictions. We can take up research related to global warming and climate change and other components related to nature. Next. A pandemic literature, starting from William Maxwell's They Came Like Swallows. This is also contemporary area. All of us are familiar. We have nearly 21 books related to pandemic literature, starting from SARS, the plague, and other books. Next. Starting from Isaac Asimov's I, Robo, brought out in 1950, we can think of another topic for our research, artificial intelligence in literature. The reason is, after 20 years, 60% of the workforce will have artificial intelligence. We have artificial intelligence. So there is a necessity for students and researchers of literature to familiarize this area, artificial intelligence in literature. Next. Shakespeare's, works have become Shakespeare studies now. So trends in Shakespearean studies is one of the important areas that all of us must read, because the reason is there is a book, Feminist Shakespeare, a recent book, where how a feminist will understand the plays written by Shakespeare. So we have lot of studies. We have Army Zez's book, A Tempest, which was rewritten, the Tempest by William Shakespeare. Like that, we have lot of regional adaptations in Tamil and Malayalam about the canonical plays of Shakespeare have become regional studies material also. So this other area we have to think. Next. Yeah, this is one of the very, very important areas, Creoles. So if you go to Haiti, Haiti, Caribbean, one of the Caribbean islands, you will be surprised to note the Creoles will be used in higher education. Okay, the tertiary educational policies, take Creoles as one of the important languages also. So we can't dismiss that the Creoles are not useful for higher education. But Haiti is a model. Haiti is a model where they try to bring Creoles inside the higher education policies. Next. Yeah, this is one of the powerful books I have read, Borderlands by Gloria Anzaldúa. So this book is one of the powerful books to understand the plight of the mixed race people in this world. Border studies is an interdisciplinary field in the culture studies that critically examines the border and identity understandings found in political and everyday discourses. So this book is an example for the Mexican American people's plight. Okay, so this book is resulted in creating a separate theory in culture studies, that is border studies theory. Next. So, in eco literature or eco criticism, we have eco fiction, environmental protection fiction, hazardous waste fiction, industrial pollution fiction, offenses against the environment fiction, pollution related fiction, right? You can also add climate fiction, CLIFE here also. So this book, Slow Violence and the Environmentalism of the Poor by Rob Nixon, is one of the examples for studies related to ecology. Next. Next area that we have to think for researchers like us is mixed race literature. It is very, very popular in Canada. Similarly, we have mixed people in US, Australia, UK, and many other countries. So this is other trend, okay, that we can see in this book, Mixed Race Literature, edited by Jonathan Brennan. Next. Yeah, translation studies focusing on culture, region, and regional languages. Okay, this is some key textbook, but after that, we have become cultural translation, regional, and then regional languages. From regional languages into English, like that, we have a lot of trends now in translation studies also. Next. Okay, our next area is regional literary studies. We have this book for understanding how region plays a very, very vital role, like Malgudi Days or Manawaka novels in Canada. Okay, so Manawaka, Malgudi, or regions, correct? Next. Yeah, resistance literature by Barbara Harlow is other area. That this book is widely used all over the world to understand how literature has become a tool to resist the hegemony and power. Next. So I have last three slides as conclusion. So culture studies is very much interested in focusing literature from below. The importance must be given for marginal voices. Regional voices are very important. Film studies is one of the important tools where we can, convert any text as a movie. Okay, oral texts are very, very. It is all the time not written. Oral texts are very important. So literature based on social reform and social justice are very, very important. And also contesting post-colonial studies. We should not all the time discuss post-colonial. We have to debate, we have to contest, we have to question post-colonial theories. And also Latin American and other hyphenated and mixed people studies with interdisciplinary and cultural studies inputs have become trends now elsewhere. Next. So other areas we can think is narratology. Very, very less research is done. Lexicography, other areas. Semiotics is a rich field that we can explore. 21st century skills now, blended learning, endangered languages in the world. We have very, very less number of these in these areas. Next. the literature have become a lot of avenues for turning the tables like adaptations. Hamlet has become the Lion King. Many of you may be surprised because the Lion King is nothing but this is a story of Hamlet the Prince. Okay, so if you look at the movie after reading Hamlet, then you will have a different understanding now. If you read Hermes as a Tempest, you will have Caliban as hero and Prospero as a slave. Okay, if you read Margaret Atwood's recent novel, The Testaments, okay, and you will understand which novel's part is there as a sequel. Correct. So the recent, social media, cybernetics resulted in creating a lot of alternative literary platforms for our friends. We have blogging, we have blogging. Each one has a tool to express our own opinions. Twitter has become Twitterature, correct? It has been a portmanteau word, and we use Facebook as a board for teaching and research. Last slide, I think last slide. Next one, correct. Now, fiction has become flash fiction. Last Long Night by Lena Rather is an example. And we have fiction in 6 words only. Example, Being Pretty is Not Your Job by Viola Hastings. This is a fiction in 6 words. We have another fiction, crypto fiction in the contemporary time by the Canadian writer Aretha Van Herk. Invisible Ink is the best example. Next, drama. The study of drama has taken all of us to performance studies in this world. It is our students perform poems, our students perform prose pieces, correct? So we have a lot of journalistic writings now, starting from journalistic prose. We have a lot of divisions, transformations in the text called prose. Next. Yeah, poetry has become performance poetry. Okay, if you write haiku in Twitter, it becomes twaiku. Okay, what is twaiku? Haiku is the practice of tweeting in haiku with the rules of using 144 characters or less and 17 syllables are considered to be twaiku now. For example, Cassie's twaiku on Twitter is surprisingly accurate using 140 characters and 17 syllables. And now literature has become, using the visual culture, it has become literature, okay, using the postman to Twitter and literature, because we have aphorisms, poetry, and fiction in Twitters now. Now 144 characters become 240 characters now. So even epics are retold in Twitters. Long Twitters like epic retold presented in many Twitters. So epics are also retold in Twitters. So this is the success of visual culture and literature. Okay. So thank you so much for your patient listening. If you have any questions, I'll be ready to take one or two questions, or I can also email my answers if Badhu sends questions here. Thank you.
Sure, sir. Sure. Thank you, sir. Now we shall wait for questions. There is a question, sir.
Yeah, where in the chat box?
Yes, sir. So, what are the conceptual frameworks in cultural studies to carry out research on the same? Yes, sir, in the chat box, sir.
Yes. See, actually, the concepts are multi-disciplinary in nature. So, for culture studies framework, we can take gender theories, we can take the theories related to class, we can take theories related to Marxism, and also feminism, So lot of theories are available. It is an open book. So if you say literature is a kind of closed network, the culture studies is a kind of open book where we can take a lot of concepts, whichever is related to our own interest. We can definitely take. Yeah, not a problem. And any other question, Badru?
So there is a question, sir. Can you mention few areas related to spirituality and its theories? Spirituality.
Spirituality, actually, I am not a specialist in that area, but one area that is known to me is hagiography. Hagiography is the discourses of the saints, okay, saints. So, Bhakti literature we have in Tamil Nadu, we have Vashana literature in Karnataka, okay. So, Basavana is one of the writers we can think of. Like that, we have, there are specialists in that area, so I'll be happy to refer to them also if possible. Yeah.
Thank you, sir.
Okay.
So there's another question. Why
Yeah.
Maori writing is to be termed instead of New Zealand literature, sir? Any specific reasons?
No, actually, there are many. There are white men in New Zealand. So Maoris are considered to be the indigenous people in New Zealand. So they would like to be addressed as Maori writers instead of New Zealand writers. Okay. New Zealand. The word New Zealand means long cloud. It means what? New Zealand means it is a very long cloud in the sky. That is New Zealand. Okay. But Maoris are, they believe in cosmos. They believe in asserting their own identity. So they want to be addressed by their own name, the indigenous name Maori.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, there's other question by Venkat Ramana Gupta. He's asking, can we weave a novel written by indigenous writer from cultural studies? Yeah, definitely. Definitely you can do like that. I
Jayakant.
studied Jayakant's novel, ஒரு மனிதன் ஒரு வீடு ஒரு உலகம் from this perspective. Yeah, you can do, but what type of indigenous perspective we have is very, very important. Thank you. Yeah, narratology. Somebody is Rima. Says a few books on. Yeah, I can email. Get her email, but I will mail her. Okay.
Sure, sir. Sure. I'll get.
There's other question, neo-feminism. I can also refer some books. So Bindu Sagar's email also I need.
Okay, sir. We'll collect and.
Yeah, I will definitely answer. Yeah.
Sure.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, sir. Dear participants and my dear professor. So, as usual, no, you have done a wonderful session, sir. No, you discussed about the most wonderful thing that you do often is that no, you will introduce so many books that no one will be able to do that. No, you will whenever you talk about a concept, no, you will have a book to refer to immediately. That is what a wonderful thing I have witnessed in so many of your lectures. Whenever you talk about a concept, we can expect that you will come out with 2-3 books from where the concepts are readily explained. And today also you have given given an introduction to so many books related to culture studies, various aspects of culture studies. No, that is the most important thing, is that no, it is not overall information. It is a comprehensive information about various aspects of culture studies. Now, what are all aspects that can be explored in culture studies? Now, you have done such a wonderful thing, and for everything, you the authors, you have produced the books and the concepts which can be discussed in that particular aspect. So I thank you for this highly informative, well organized lecture, Professor. I thank on behalf of the Department of English, on behalf of the learned participants here, and on behalf of my colleagues here, I wish to extend our sincere gratitude to Dr. S. Armstrong, Professor and Head of Department of English, University of Madras. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, Bhagav. Thank you for the opportunity, because it is also, it gives me an opportunity to read. So I should thank you first, because it gives me a kind of responsibility also. That I have to do this sincerely. There are many faculty members are waiting at this pandemic time. So at least we should speak something useful for them. That kind of motivation is there for me. Thank you for the
Thank you.
opportunity.
Thank you.
Sir, thank you, sir. Sam
Thank you.
Kaustirajan, sir.
நல்லா இருக்கீங்களா?
Sir,
காசிராஜ்.
yes, sir, Kaustirajan.
Thank you, David.
Thank you, sir.
Sir, thank you, sir. It's my pleasure. Thank you.
மேம் இது தானே பேசியிருந்தீங்க நான் இதில் சரிங்க வேறு நம்பர் இருக்கு சரிங்க சரிங்க நான் கொடுத்துட்றேங்க சரிங்க சரி சரிங்க சரி